I'm well. It sounds so great when you say it. I was like, ooh, who's about to talk about all this? This is dope.
It would be you.
It's me. It's me.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Of
It's
course.
wonderful to have you. Where are you calling in from, by the way?
I am in sunny today, Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, lovely, lovely. I'm glad you're getting some sun today. I know it's been a
Yes.
bit dreary.
The gray is getting to me.
Yeah, well, we're gonna jump into depressiveness and stuff like that. I have seasonal depression, so I could
Yeah.
have a whole conversation
That's a
just
whole
about
nother
that.
talk, right?
That's a whole nother talk, but we'll just weave it in when needed. But before we jump in, I would love to hear a bit about more about your story, your journey, and tell me about the better spot.
Sure, sure. So Madilynn A. Beck, she, her, and hers, therapist, coach, health tech founder. And the way in which I got into being a founder, first time founder, non-technical tech founder, is the way that life often does it, right? Out of necessity comes innovation. So I was doing my associateship with LAUSD, the largest public school system in the country, and it was great. I was working with cutie poc teens, really had an incredible journey there, and the pandemic happened, and or the big panini as I like to call it, and that kind of happened, and things were upside down, and I lost about 60% of my community, right, my client base, because those students didn't have access to technology, didn't have access to hardware, software, and also a lot of them were actually in places, right, if they had to do virtual counseling, virtual therapy, their home was not a safe space to do that. So I started kind of just looking at technology in a different way. Everyone around me was looking at health tech as, ooh, it's so amazing and it's so versatile. And companies like BetterHelp and a bunch of other ones were surging because they were solving this problem of accessibility. But the interesting thing is they continued to leave out, right, the practitioner or the person that couldn't access the technology. So when you think about health and wellness as being a service of experience, life experience, lived experiences, and the infiltration of what technology looks like in that lived experience space, there's a lot of questions that come up. So I first started the Better Spot looking at it from the lens of physical space, because
Mm.
we're human and we live on planet Earth. This is where we are, as far as we know, right? And so when you think about taking the person out of meeting in person, not all health and wellness modalities, methods can be practiced online. I always use like the terrible joke of like, let me know when I can get a massage online and I'll sign up. Because it's just, you can't do it.
Yeah.
So that was the first solution. The first solution and iteration of the Better Spot was a physical space, right? Offering immediate on demand care to practitioners to be able to find that space. And then it evolved into, how do we take technology and allow technology to, number one, be ethical, number two, be secure, and number three, be able to empower, right, and help the economic sovereignty of practitioners, because that's a huge crux of sustainability, right? We are the vessel for other folks in their healing, but how are we being supported? How is the practitioner being supported? So that's the journey of me within the Better Spot, and all the things.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there, and it's so amazing, just talking about ethics in technology and accessibility, and to be able to access healthcare or a practitioner through technology is privilege. Not
Yep,
everybody has that
completely,
access. Not
completely.
everyone has that safe space, like you were saying. Oh, if I'm going to be in therapy, well, if I'm going to be doing it at home, I might be wanting to talk about the things that are happening right
In my
here,
home,
right?
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm it's very exciting to hear that you are a part of this solution, because this is a very complex problem. And I
Thank
feel
you.
like we're in the very beginnings of this problem, right?
100%. 100%. People, think that, oh, it's so far along in X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, when you think about just like the history of the world as a whole, this is not even like a blip in time, right?
Right.
The advances and how rapid things are changing constantly, right? So even just the thought of the beginning of the panini to the end of it, and how laws had to change in order to accommodate the Board of
Mhm.
Behavioral Sciences and different state
Mhm.
legislatures and what they would allow and wouldn't allow, and just, I mean, it's a whole thing. It's a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And there was the connectivity affordability program. I forget if that's the
Mm-hmm.
exact name of it, but suddenly, it's like, well, you need high-speed internet to do all the things. It's like, well, what if I
Exactly.
can't afford high-speed internet? If
Right.
I don't have
Right.
access to that? And that is a program that's still going, but now they're looking at cutting it. And it's like, well, my people's
What's going to
situations
happen?
haven't changed. Yeah, what are people going to
Exactly.
do? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, even when you think about like to your point, last thing that I'll say, because I mean, I could talk about, I mean, this is kind of stuff I could just,
Yeah.
I could chew on all day, but it's,
Yeah.
it's those things of, well, people have now built their livelihood around
Hmm.
what was afforded to them in those programs, whether it be distributed workplaces, whether it be e-commerce. Some folks went into, so it's just, okay, you had this program and you're good now, and we're going to take that program away, and we're going to take everything that came with it, but we're not going to assess for the impact that taking away would be. Is it going to be greater, right, than it was how we found you to begin with? So yeah, endless questions.
Yeah, endless, endless. So let's talk about we're talking about some of the emotional states that folks can go through and that you
Yeah,
are helping people with. And I'm really curious to hear if you could just set us up for this conversation and give us a zoom back. What is high functioning depression? What does that even
sure.
mean? How does it show up?
Sure. So I always have to do a disclaimer, Hunter. I got to do, I am a therapist. I'm not your therapist, whether you're watching this live or later. Um, Again, the internet has created a really interesting dichotomy within how people consume misinformation and disinformation about health and wellness. So that all said, the clinical description of high functioning depression is that it is a less severe disorder of consistent or persistent depression. So something that's called, oh goodness, I'm blanking on the name now, but it's dysmithia, excuse me, dysmithia. So it's essentially persistent depression, right? Persistent symptoms of depression. So symptomatic depression, if you've ever gone to a GP, a general practitioner, they kind of give you this like little worksheet. Sometimes there's smiley faces on it. Sometimes it's a rating system. Different doctors and practitioners do different things. But on a scale of 1 to 10, have you been feeling happy? On a scale of 1 to 10, do you have issues sleeping? And so they kind of walk you through all these different things, asking you kind of generalized questions to assess your mental and emotional state of being. But if you look at HFD, right, high functioning depression, it's something that often goes undiagnosed because the non clinical term for it is called smiling depression. And so
Hmm.
it's essentially something that someone who's experiencing it, right, potentially not diagnosed, is really good at hiding. Whether they are experiencing depressive symptoms and they dive harder into work and that's their coping, or they self-medicate, whatever that may look like, whether it's substance, whether it's content, whether it's the idea of kind of different addictive and coping mechanisms has evolved again with technology, the things that people have
Hmm.
easier access to. So yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell what HFD is and what it looks like.
Yeah, that's really comprehensive. And there's so much, I feel like you said, people are good at hiding it. I definitely can
Mm-hmm.
identify with that. I was until I wasn't, right? And then it
Right.
became an issue that I really had to address because it was showing up in my life where it
Mm.
went from, ooh, high functioning to now I'm just not functioning well because it started to
Yep.
go off
Yep.
the reins. I couldn't hold it together anymore, right?
Yeah, yeah. And that's, and that's one of the things as well. It's like this this internal self-talk. It's so difficult. I feel like there's so many things in the world, specifically in digital content, or even, you know, in our own social circles. Let's take it off of the internet and put it into real life, right? Where people really do believe they're doing you, you know, the idea of like the strong Black woman, or being strong, or being happy. I mean, you could literally insert the A for B into anything. It could be the happy best friend. It could be the charismatic person at the gym. It could be any type of descriptor for anyone, right? You have this idea of how this person is supposed to show up in life because they always have. And then it almost becomes like, you know, the backfiring, the curse for that person, because you have an expectation of how they show up, what their performative behaviors are. So yeah, so talking about kind of you are until you aren't is 100%. And those somatic things that happen, right? So things that are happening within the body always, the body always knows. As much as the brain is like, oh, we got to keep going, we got to push, you got to make that deadline, you got to do the Zoom, you got to go pick this up, don't forget about the birthday party, blase blase, right? Whatever it may be, the body is going to tell you when I'm not going to cuss, I normally do, but like I've had a very strong narration right there. It's going to tell you when you need to sit down, you know what I mean?
Son Maya, can you bleep us in the background? Is there a delay here? We'll work on that.
You know, but yeah, it'll let you know what's up for sure, no matter what you're showing out here.
Yeah, the body keeps the score, right? Yeah. So it like you said, it's this internal battle, right? Of this, the mind can do one thing, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z. The body's gonna keep up with us. We also have these expectations from outside that then we start to internalize, right?
Yep,
and
100%.
And for me, in my experience, it was like, then I started to resent them a bit, because now I was like, oh, I got to be like this, I got to be like that. Oh, and like now I'm getting angry and my body is showing up in a different way.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it could be so many different things, right? You could start developing resentments. And the wild part is the person, the experience, whatever it may be that you're resenting, has no idea. So
Right.
it's, you know what I mean? Like it goes from being this interpersonal thing to being like totally internal. And you're just like, hey, I'm so happy to be here. You know, oh, great.
You're
yeah.
Like, are you really? Wow.
Right. You know, and they're like, well, wait, are they okay? Was that just me? Did you feel that? You know, and it's a lot. It's a lot. And it kind of, it starts to shift, and it easily, again, will come to surface no matter what it looks like.
Yeah. So it shows up in all these different ways. So we need to take this holistic approach, right? So
100%.
you talk about, I'd love to hear about how you work with this idea of holistic wellness, right? We got the mind, we got the body, we got the spirit. What do we do? Please help.
Yeah. So I mean, the approach of like holisticism is it's all layers, right? It's all functions, it's all kinds of categories or sections. So it's mind, body, spirit, right? It's also environmental, it's familial. Like the approach and idea of holisticism is that it's all encompassing. And so when you think about that from kind of the infrastructure of what holisticism within itself represents, you have to think about how many pieces to that puzzle exist. So from a spiritual standpoint, one person who, you know, maybe has a relationship with spirituality where they don't call it that, right? They can use another terminology. They would say, oh, this mindfulness is not mindfulness, this is coaching. I don't care what you call it, whatever you need it to be, right? So if it's that, that's what it's going to look like. Or it can be Reiki, or it can be, some people will say prayer over meditation, or it can be acupuncture, or it can be, right? So there's so many different ways to kind of tap into the different modalities of holistic wellness to be able to deal with high functioning depression or any other type of disorders that, you know, you may be thinking that you're experiencing, maybe in complete denial, right? Like maybe you're like, oh, I feel a little bit off, but like, I'm all good. I'm going to keep pushing. It was a long week. It was, insert whatever kind of excuse that you use to continue moving forward. But start to really think about the different ways in which you can identify and start speaking to your body, your mind, and your spirit in ways that maybe you potentially wouldn't. I always say this to my stepdad, like now he like chuckles about it, but he's almost 90 and Southern Black man, grew up in Louisiana. And I remember I came home from university over winter break and I was feeling some kind of way, like a really bad way. And I remember sitting at the dinner table. I'm an only child, and my mom and my stepdad were there. And I was thinking to myself, like, I'm going to be vulnerable with these boomers right now. And I was like, I I was like, I think that I'm depressed. I was like, I think
Yeah.
I think I'm experiencing depression. And my stepdad's response was like, without missing a beat or a bite, he was just like, you ain't depressed. That's a white people thing. So then I was like,
Mm,
oh, okay. I mean, I do go to school with a lot of white. Okay, well then maybe it's that. But it's almost as if being able to identify, being able to have access to the information of whatever those symptoms may be and truly be diagnosed properly is a privilege, right?
hmm.
Even the
Yeah.
thought of being able to put your finger on something is considered a privilege, and having an experience that may be different than others is something that you just don't even have access to. So those are kind of all the things within holisticism that I constantly encourage people to pick and choose. Just like think of it like an old
Mm.
school Shoney's or wherever y'all grew up. I grew up in Chicago, but like whatever buffet, like we had Old Country Buffet and Shoney. Whatever buffet you grew up near, like think of it like that. Like you don't have
Yeah.
to go into a 32-week intensive. Like you don't have to be like, I am going to try psychedelics for a crisis breakthrough because I saw it on TikTok and I'm going to do a 10-week program and I'm going to pause, breathe,
Mm.
learn about it, reach out to a practitioner that is certified and licensed in the thing that you're interested in and have a conversation with them, have a consultation, right? To figure out what you need because everything that you need is not always what you need exactly at that time.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, like the buffet and
Mm-hmm.
my some amazing therapists that I've had we referred to it as the tool belt. So what's in my
Yes,
belt
yes,
today? Today
exactly,
is it just listening to a song that helps calm me down because I'm
exactly.
stressed out? Is it meditation? Is it drinking a glass of water? Something as simple as that.
Hydration is literally hydration so important.
It's so
It's so
important. Luckily,
important.
I have my Power to Fly Diversity Reboot series from a couple years ago. Oh, look at that. You got a Yeti. You got the big one.
It's so good. I love it. Hydration's everything.
Yeah, it's so important. And just having access to these different things and being, like you said, talking to someone that's licensed and a professional practitioner that can help identify what will work in my buffet, what will work in my toolkit. And it can
Exactly.
change from day to day, but that toolkit over there for that person might not be my toolkit.
Exactly. Yeah.
And learning about it on TikTok might not be the way to just
Why
jump
not?
in.
Yeah,
Maybe,
may not. I'm super grateful. I will say this. I'm super grateful for what social media has done in regards to kind of like the introduction, right? To
mm-hmm.
kind of broaden that awareness where people are like, oh, I've never heard of this, adaptogens and mushroom coffee. Like that is people are like, oh wow, I've never,
Yeah.
even though it's like thousands of years old, like great, wonderful, you know about it now. Awesome. Let's take baby steps. Like maybe we don't have to
Mm-hmm.
go out and get like a 2-year supply. Like let's just get into the things now
Right.
that we know
Right.
about them. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree that it's a great level of introduction, but with all of the social medias, it's inherently tied to buying something, right? It's like,
Yes.
oh, if I
Mm-hmm.
buy this thing, I'm going to feel better. I'm going to buy
Mm-hmm.
that thing, this workshop, that mushroom coffee
Yeah.
sludge, like
Yeah. Yeah.
those
Yeah.
things might help, but they're not the solution, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The
Yeah,
solution is in the work, right? The solution
right.
is in the discipline and the continuity of the work, being able to go back to it, being able to have that tool belt or that buffet, and take as you need and kind of leave the rest, right?
Yeah, yeah. What I would love to hear a bit more about, thank you for sharing that story about your your stepdad, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
your stepfather. And when he gave you his advice, his take
Hmm.
on that, was there, I imagine you're not the only person that has that story or something
Right. No,
like
of
it,
course not.
right?
Hmm.
And what
Hmm.
was that? Was there a process of internalizing that and then unlearning that? Or how did you handle
Yeah.
that and that navigation to where you are now? Because clearly, I don't
Yeah.
think you believe that to be true, what he said
Yeah,
for
no,
you.
no, no. And that's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question before. Yeah, I mean, there was definitely I went to school for theater, so or my BFA, excuse me, was in theater. I went
Yeah.
back to I just kept going to school. I
No
was like,
wonder we
let's
get
just keep
along so well. We're both theater
yes,
kids.
yes. So it's like, like I feel like internalization is literally like a requirement for
Yeah.
being
Yeah. Yeah.
um so yeah, so there was definitely a period of like internal processing and just kind of going through what I had to go through. There was a period of like resenting him,
Mm,
right, of him being like me kind of sitting on it and being like, well, if I am experiencing this thing, then what are you implying, right? Like there were so many different things that kind of came up because I had to first take some sort of empathy, which obviously, I mean, I became a therapist. So I grew into being a professional empath. But at that time, like being like 19, 20 years old, I was in a space of first having to even admit that I felt something was wrong, which
mhm.
like, I'm a backstreet baby. So it's like I came from the generation of like, what are you talking about? Like everything I am perfection. Like there is so like having those conversations and then just continuing to break it down. And then coming to
Mm,
a place of, okay, well, if it is seen as a white thing, then how do I receive treatment for it? How do I get a practitioner to properly diagnose me with it? How do I have to, do I have to do my own work? Do I have to self heal? Am I not going to be?
mm,
So there were so many things after just the initial kind of gut punch of, oh, wait a minute, am I even this thing? Because I questioned that. I was like, oh, thumbs up, thumbs up.
yeah,
But
there we go.
I questioned, am I really depressed? If it is
Mm,
predominantly a white people thing, right? Then what am I experiencing?
mhm.
Um, and then after just being like, that's ridiculous, moving on, then then,
I'm
then
gonna
figuring
take
out
take what works and I'm gonna leave all
I'm
of
gonna
that
leave
there.
all that. Just push that right on over on his plate. Push that right on over. But yeah, so it was definitely a journey, and I brought a lot of people on that journey, right? Some of them willingly, others of them I paid, right? So
Sure, sure.
but yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. That's really, I always appreciate when I hear, how it started, how's it going, to
Hmm.
memify that,
Yep.
to really see, oh, that's that experience, you're able to grow from that, even if it wasn't
Hmm.
the information itself wasn't the information that was healing, but it was
Right.
processing what you received. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was the ignition, right? It was the ignition
Mm,
that the fact that someone who loved me so much, when I came to them with not even like a subconscious or like a low key cry for help, I literally was like, I am this thing. And their
yeah,
response was, no, 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 that's not for you.
right.
Right. that
Yeah.
that was a huge ignition for me as I continued moving through, college and then grad school and then grad school again and then becoming a therapist. Just this resonance of other people are at that same intersection in their own journey of healing. Other people
Mm,
have also had their own emotional state and mental state questioned and challenged by people that love them so incredibly much that they, basically are like pouring more of the Kool-Aid into your cup of being like, no, 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 you're fine. You're good. You're fine. Everything's fine.
yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Right. Yeah, because it actually, like you said, you brought empathy to it, and it
Mhm.
can come from a loving place. They want you to be fine. They want you to be
Exactly.
not worried or sad or anxious or depressed, but ignoring it or saying it doesn't happen for you is not going to fix
Exactly.
it.
That's not the
Yeah,
way. Yeah.
right. So we only have a couple minutes left, and it was kind of fitting that you suddenly had this emoji that popped up on the screen, because it
The
leads me
thumbs
to
up.
my next question, which is about artificial intelligence, because that was actually
Ah,
AI exhibiting a
yep.
moment right in front of us there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, obviously we're all aware that AI is on the scene and it's impacting every industry. And so we were speaking to earlier about, remote healthcare, right? And
Mm-hmm.
these Zoom calls and different ways to connect to providers. And now I'm curious, how do you think AI will have, what effects will it have on both sides of the industry? What effects will AI have on wellness for patients and practitioners?
Mm, goodness, all of the effects. Is that an option? Option D, it'll have all the effects on all the things forever and ever. So yeah, I mean, I approach my kind of perspectives on AI just like I approach my perspectives on big pharma. I don't believe that any one thing is a solution for everything, which is probably why I'm in preventative care and holistic medicine, right? Like, I believe that it's a compilation, a necessity to have all things considered in order to find what works for each individual. So, when I think about AI, do I think it is a phenomenal tool? Yes. Do I think historically phenomenal tools have been built by not so phenomenal entities? Yes. What are the results of those things? I think that we need to continue to have significant awareness, um, regardless of what seat you sit in. All of us consumers, right? 100%. Some are innovators, some are decision makers, some are, financial pieces to the puzzle. So regardless of what seat you sit in, you do have contribution within the community of AI, and look into that. How do you fit into it? How are you contributing to it? So many folks will just like rush through an email or an app and just click the button, not think about the thing, and then they'll see some post and be like up in arms and upset. And I'm always sitting back like, but if you're on the app, then you already clicked the button to agree to the thing. I mean, what? Right? Like, a lot of
Yeah.
times people just don't realize. And like I said earlier,
Mm,
like, one of the things that we're solving with the Better Spot, the misinformation and disinformation, those are two of the biggest things. And they're like it's just blossoming. It's a culture in like sixth grade biology that's like taking over, um,
yeah.
in not the best way. And so I think that really
Hmm.
knowing what it looks like, how you're using it ethically. And then the last piece that I'll say on it is something that we're personally doing is, again, remembering that there are humans behind the technology.
Hmm.
So I urge all, whether they're founders, engineers, managers, operators, business people, SMBs, whatever, right? Like, if you are going to use AI, if you are going to hire someone to build AI, really understand that the human building it comes with their own implicit bias. And
Hmm.
naturally, they're going to build their biases into the thing that they're building. So, what does that
Yeah.
look like? Right?
Hmm.
Is diversity a way that you can help spread? You know what I mean? There's a lot of different ways in it, and a lot of people who have really insightful and unbelievable ways of approaching it. But those are just some of the ways that we're looking at AI and how we're going to use it and how we interact with AI as a whole within health and wellness.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's so important because AI is trained on the whole internet, which is a reflection of every opinion. And there's some great things on there, and there's some really terrible bias
Yeah,
opinions on there. And the foundation models, they did their best to try to help
yeah,
mitigate it, but it's
yeah.
still there. It's still
Mm-hmm.
there. And it's up to, like you said, the decision makers. And for people like, oh, will you build AI for us? You can ask more questions. What are you doing to
Exactly.
mitigate these biases? What are you going to do for our implementation of it and help us
Yeah,
through that process?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is
It's
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 the
it's.
wild ride that we're on.
Ooh, buckle up.
Yeah, here we go. Well, Madilynn, we are out of time. Thank you so much for making the time today.
Thank you.
How
Thank
else
you.
can folks reach out to you to keep the conversation going?
Yeah. I mean, everything is the Better Spot. So thebetterspot.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's just my account is my name, Madilynn A. Beck. You can email me directly, Madilynn at thebetterspot.com. Yeah, I love all conversations around everything that we talked about today. So, and also if anyone has any questions around preventative care or alternative care in regards to like, needing support, the Better Spot is obviously the place for you to come and check that out. So hit me up.
There's no better spot, clearly.
There's no better spot. Ooh,
I offer it up.
one. Yeah.
Thank you, Madilynn. I look
Thank
forward to our next
you.
conversation. I hope we get to do it again soon.
Please, that'd be awesome. Have a great one.
Yeah, you too. Bye now.